Our second speaker will be Naveed Arshad. I can see Naveed online. Naveed, do you want to try sharing your screen?
Sure.
Hi, good to see you. Yeah, while the talk is setting up, let me give some brief introduction to Naveed. Naveed obtained his PhD from University of Colorado Boulder, and then he is now the associate professor and the chair of the CS department in the Lahore University of Management of Science. Today, as you can see from his title, he will be talking about important issue about equality in fighting climate change. Okay, without further ado, let's welcome Naveed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Naman and other organizers for inviting me to this workshop. Typically, I present computer science talks and which are quite deep in science and tech. But this talk is slightly different. We'll be talking about my other experiences that I've got while working with many different agencies and while working on startups and other areas in which of climate change where I have been working. So as you may have guessed, that I have moved from a core computer science professional to a person who is looking at things at the transdisciplinary level. So my examples that I'm going to take are from Pakistan, since this is where I reside and this is where I know most about. So I know that there are other examples in other parts of the world that are maybe even more striking, but I think the Pakistan perspective is probably I would like to share here. So Pakistan has been under the influence of climate change, not in the last 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, but for the last 20 years. I mean, we have been seeing these climate change changes anecdotally. And this summer, we actually were hit by a lot of different climate change events, and notably was the heat wave that struck us. So in Pakistan, there is a city called Jagbabad. Already people say that this is an uninhabitable city from the perspective of a human being, because the typical temperatures there is 45 plus 50 centigrade, and when there is no electricity and other amenities, then of course it's becomes really, really hot. And then this heat wave took the temperature to 53, which was a record temperature ever recorded in the city. And of course, this impact the most vulnerable, the people who are probably living already on the edge. They are underprivileged, and they do not have the means to actually make sure that they can survive in this, and those are the most vulnerable communities. Now, so Pakistan is a slightly different in terms of climate change, that it's the 7th most vulnerable country, but about 2nd in terms of economic losses. And the reason we have so many economic losses that are expected from climate change is because that if the world temperature increased by whatever degree centigrade, our temperature will increase 1 centigrade more, which means that the country will have more climate change impact coming before the other countries. So that's why the economic impacts are much more, and as you've probably seen last slide, it's $6 to $12 billion just in adaptation cost. And if we continue like this whole area of India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh is heading towards a dead zone with a 4 centigrade. I mean, God forbid that we go into that area, but this is something that we are really concerned about, that we will be at the forefront. And since a lot of population of the world, almost 1/4 of the population of the world reside in this area, this is going to be a human catastrophe. All the Himalayan glaciers will melt, and there will be, which this region depends almost 50% of the water. We depend on those glaciers. Now, of course, countries like Pakistan and others have contributed very little to climate or the emissions, but we are at the forefront of the brunt of climate change that is happening. So of course, the world powers combined together. There have been many COP conferences, but I mean, the problem is that whatever being committed is not being delivered. So these green countries created this Green Climate Fund, that this fund will be available for the adaptation and mitigation cost of climate change in the other countries. And this is true that this fund has not been receiving a lot of money, except a few countries which are keeping up to their commitments. But I'm not going to talk about, because this is unknown news. What I'm going to talk about is a slightly different view, that whatever money that has come, how it is being used. So I have been dealing with some of the climate finance agencies. And what I see is that all these agencies are trying to give to you is loans, 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 and more loans. And then there is very little, maybe 5% of grant or maybe 10% of equity, but the bulk, the lion's share, is on loans. And there is also a catch associated with these financing. And you can have various words, to call them. They have various new, very fancy terms, but bottom line is these are loans. The countries have to pay them back. Now, what are the utilization of these loans? You can use them for infrastructure. You can use them for procurement, capacity building, training, technical assistance. There's strict not allowed R&D in these loans. There's also, you cannot set up an industry. And you cannot really help the local communities, because these loans are large and government deal with them. So they cater for large initiatives. So no micro adaptation and no micro mitigation. It means that the communities that are at the forefront are basically do not receive any help. Whatever help they receive within the communities themselves or the neighboring communities, other than that, there is no help. And then on top of that, there is a center in Pakistan that conducted a study that most of these loans and these instruments, 40% of the money is channeled back to the donors in terms of consultants, in terms of security expenses, in terms of others, which is a bulk of the amount. Now, one may say that, well, these the funds are there for sustaining. If we just give away all the fund, who is going to repay, and then how can we help in future? Well, here's a problem. The problem is that these loans are given in a solid currency like USD or Great Britain pound or euros. And the rates are constantly depreciating. For example, the Pakistani rupee has lost 8.2 times its value since 1991. So somebody who signed up for a loan in US dollar, maybe $100 million US loan, now has to pay about 8 times more. And the challenge over here is not that, of course, there's inflation going on, the rates are going up in the country also. But the communities that are at the bottom of the pyramid are usually get the least share of these loans, and they get the least benefit from the loan, but they also have the least input price. Let me give you an example. So Pakistan is famous for, just give me 5 minutes, when 5 minutes remaining, just give me a signal so that I speed up if I'm lagging behind. So the mangoes is a major fruit in the southern Punjab, where I am from. And a kilo of fruit is usually picked up from a farm at 20 rupees, which is not even 10 cents. And when it is sold at maybe at 400 rupees, almost 20 times more. That 20 rupees has not gone to 25 in the last 5 years, but the cost may have gone from 200 to 400. So for the middleman, the prices have gone up, but for the farmer who's growing, the prices have not gone up. But he has to pay the most amount of taxes and everything. So now, with this climate change impacts in the last 20 years and productivity going on, lack of productivity going on, currently the government's budget, we just passed the budget yesterday, 43% is just on interest payments. So how can a country that's already under so much burden of loans is going to pay for further loans in the name of climate change? That's the collateral for all these loans is the next generation. It means that anybody who signed up to these loans is saying that, okay, my next generation or the next generation after that will pay this loan. I'm going to retire in 5 years and going to die in few years afterwards. So this old school development finance probably not going to work. And it's not going to work because the climate change hit communities do not care about climate change. That's an irony, but they don't care because they are looking for basic amenities: clean water, clean food, clean air, basic healthcare, basic transport, and they're not getting that. So when somebody's stomach is not full, they're not going to talk about climate change. And what's going to happen is that they will resort to even more, you can say, climate unhealthy means to adapt to it. And that can, overall, if everybody starts adapting to those means, it means that we are creating a more challenging problem than the previous one. A small example that some of you are familiar with is solar water pumping. It's considered, when it came a few years ago, something that's really critical because of lack of water in rivers. And so they said that and energy is not there, why don't we have the solar water pumps? But the problem was that people thought that this is an unlimited resource of water in the ground, and they started pumping like crazy. And in many areas in Pakistan, and I know across the border in India also, the water table has an alarmingly decreased. Now, the water table has a natural way of replenishment, but the problem is that because of lack of rains, this natural replenishment is not happening. So the water table is going down every year by several feet. And I mean, in a few years' time, we don't know what are they going to be extracting. So what's the way forward? The way forward is not something that we talk in locations where there's no climate change or the communities are not hit by climate change. There's local challenges and local solutions for it. And then combining that knowledge with science to make sure that it does not exacerbate the problem. We cannot solve this as a one community. It has to be a transdisciplinary approach. And the most important part has to be sustainable. Many of the projects that we see are funded by many donor agencies in grants or loans have just fall apart as soon as the loan or the money finishes, because there is no sustainability. And the sustainability has to be technical, it has to be business-wise, it has to have a business case, and then functional. And of course, there is something that is very familiar that's called subsidy. I mean, we would like to avoid subsidy at all costs, because if it's not sustainable on its own feet, it means that it will fall apart as soon as the money is gone from that loan. Now, I will now turn towards another solution that we have been working on with some local communities to solve the challenge of climate change, at least in our neighborhood. And we did on a scouting mission in several districts of Pakistan, and we looked around and looked at rural communities. And these rural communities, although their challenges are different from north and south, and their requirements are different, one thing is for sure: reliable energy is the key to climate adaptation. That's the lesson that we got from them. But reliable, affordable, and clean energy, I would say. Now, we have come up with, I mean, rather than looking at adaptation in the large, we call adaptation in the small. And we are trying to combine 3 different areas into a transdisciplinary approach. And that's called energy, food, and transportation. And when I say food, water is included in it. So energy, food, and transportation, then unless this nexus comes together, it's difficult to solve the challenges. I will probably talk about other things in this slide later, because I think I'm running short of time. But the thing is that other than climate change, there are other challenges we have to deal with. So the average land holding of a farmer has gone down by 50% or more. 43% population is food insecure. There are large swaths of population which have no grade or weak grade. And then there is a lot of post-harvest losses because of unavailability of facilities for storing, like cold storages and transport facilities. In the heartland of Pakistan, all the land is agriculture. And if we start using solar energy, and there is no wind, by the way, so if we start using solar energy, it will erode into the land that is typically used for food growth or crop growth. So we cannot use that land. So this technology of agri-photovoltaics is marvelous, because we can get double the production from the land. I mean, the solar panel is giving the energy on top, and the crops are growing. And guess what? The shading actually helps some of the crops, like lettuce and some kind of grains like maize and tomatoes. They work better in agri-photovoltaic. But agri-photovoltaic single-handedly cannot do anything. There is another challenge that we have to face, is that something called tomatoflation, which is that the rates of, let's say, the vegetables and sometimes fruits have lot swings. So a kilo of tomato maybe is available for 20 rupees. Off season, it's available for 200 rupees, so it's 10 times more. And since it's a staple vegetable, it's required every time. So in order to solve that problem, we have tried to come up with another technology that are small scale cold storages, which use variable frequency drive motors to reduce their energy usage. But active photovoltaics and cold storages, of course, cannot work together because cold storages need electricity at night as well. And here comes another piece of the puzzle, which is the storage. But the storage, if we just add storage with active photovoltaic, the cost is prohibitive. So we have added another dimension to it, and that's called electric vehicles and with swappable batteries. So these swappable battery station serves as a storage as well as a station for energizing the vehicles. Now, if you look at the overall advantage, we have gotten advantage from 186% productivity from dual use of land. The water wastage has reduced because of reduced evapotranspiration. We have cold storage right there on the farm, a small scale one. And then the battery is available for the community, for the farmer, for the village, for transport and cold storage. So this is the overall picture of where we have the energy coming from the agri photovoltaics being stored, and then it can be used for cold storage. Why in particular cold storage? Because that makes a business proposition from day one. When we met the farmer community, they said that the cold storage is something, if we have it, we can improve by our productivity by 20, 30, 50%. And that's one technology can help them. Now, we are also working on sustainability of it without government subsidies. By creating economic opportunities and also by lifting the area so that we can create opportunity right on the farm, because otherwise we are facing a migration that is happening for the last 10, 20 years. It has been slow, but it can increase very quickly if we have more changes from climate change. And then it does not require a lot of capital. All this model can be as a service model. It could be energy as a service, battery as a service, and storage as a service. So it can be developed as a business model for the farmers. And once this is useful, then we can extend it to other loads. We can do village electrification. We can do even water pumping coupled with drip irrigation or good water management, tractors, other kinds of vehicles. I mean, you name it, anything that use energy, we can cover that use case from this model. So final, I think for us, I mean, we need to have a message to the climate hit communities that you're not alone. We are there to support you, and we need to support you with the local solutions that we have, rather than waiting for the large-scale solution that probably are not going to come. And that is the message, that we have to start small to create big changes, rather than looking for help from the government, from funding agencies. I think the smaller changes that we make, I think the transdisciplinary approach really help us to make sure that one change does not have adverse impact on the other changes that we make. So with this, I'll stop and we'll be happy to take questions.
Okay, thank the speaker. Thanks Naveed for the interesting talk. Any questions? Yeah, there is some announcement locally in here, but it's just that it's too late here. People need to go out, but don't worry about it. So
I would like to add
go
one
ahead.
thing. So, I mean, I found the talk very interesting, and the reason is because I am from Pakistan, and like first 5 to 10 minutes were really like gut wrenching for me. And thank you for like this talk. And like I don't have any particular question, but I wanted to just thank for the talk and bringing this sort of like a full scale analysis of this problem, especially for developing countries, like to this forum. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, I actually that's very exciting talk and interesting talk to me. I'm just curious. How would you manage their maintenance costs? And because those devices need to be constantly checked to make sure they are safe and operate with good efficiency, etc. Right?
Yeah,
So
that's a very good question. I think that's the reason why many of the projects failed, because they didn't look at the long-term sustainability of them. So I think one thing that we are doing is that rather than importing the complete solution from some other place, we're trying to create local expertise in developing the whole ecosystem. So while maybe the village does not have expertise right there, the help is available nearby, maybe an hour or 2 hour drive in a nearby town or city. The second thing is, I think what we are doing is that we're trying to make sure that the other parts are also used properly. For example, one problem that we know that happens with solar panels, because a lot of dust, because if they're in the village communities, the panels are going to be dust, I mean, full of dust, and then that impedes the performance by 20, 30, 40%. What we are going to be doing is that there will be a sprinkler-based system. Maybe it could be a drone-based system. Maybe it could be a just plain sprinkler that will just clean the system. And again, that will be created by the local engineers so that they can provide help to the community. I think another important thing is that it has to be used as a cooperative for the whole village rather than owned by a certain farmer. So when it will be used by a cooperative, it will be a community's ownership. And that will probably help, and they will probably spare some people like technicians, part-time technicians that can actually be able to sustain the system for the long term. It's still an experiment. We hope that we cover all those check boxes and the system is. And the reason why we went scouting around is to look for people who have been actually successfully operating parts of these solutions. So we were trying to learn that what made them operate these solutions for many years. So we got lots of lessons, and I think local knowledge is always helpful.
yeah, I think your talk reminds me some of the talk that Chen, they are talking about providing energy service in Africa. Of course, there's no big infrastructure, etc. But they said there's the vendors who own the small house and then sell the small goods to local customers. Those are they manage to make a deal, so they will help maintain the storage system and also install the solar panel, etc. And then people naturally just go there and then essentially they buy stuff from these vendors, and then the vendor help to maintain all these local infrastructure for them. So there might be that's the Africa model. So maybe there's some similarity.
We can learn a lot from the similar models of energy cooperatives and energy as a service. And we are looking, and then I'll be happy to, if you can share some details about where you listen to that talk. So we'll also look at it and see that how can we take advantage from their experience.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I will try to look it for offline and send it to you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Naveed, for the very nice talk. Enjoyed it.